Good afternoon and welcome to France, where, as you watch, 3 times world champion Alain Prost sitting in second position on the grid in his Williams Renault, I can tell you that it is hot, very hot, by which I mean 28 degrees, and the track temperature is about 44 degrees. Most of the drivers have stayed out of their cars until the very last moment. I've just seen Rubens Barrichello having a bottle of water poured down inside his overalls so that the evaporation will help keep him cool as long as possible once the race has started. Now, this Magny-Cours circuit, which is 2.65 miles long, is only in its third year of life. It's a very much revamped version of the previous one. It's got just about every kind of corner that you can imagine in it, from the 50-mile-an-hour Adelaide hairpin up to the tremendously demanding sixth gear Estoril sweeper, which they take at about 140, 150 miles an hour. And last year we had rain. Those of you who watched the race will remember a stirring fight with Martin Brundle coming in third position in the Benetton. He's no longer in that team, of course. And there is his teammate, Marc Blundell, and the two Englishmen driving for the French Ligier team. And there was an enormous amount of criticism about their appointments in France when the season began, have covered themselves with glory already, because they are sitting in third and fourth positions. That is Martin Brundle in third place, his highest ever grid position in his Grand Prix career, and his teammate Marc Blundell in fourth position on the grid. Two blue Ligiers alongside each other, is similarly in his highest ever grid position. We've already had some drama here this morning, just before the race, as you look at Marc Blundell, because the unfortunate Michael Andretti, who has had so much bad luck in his short Grand Prix career, this is only going to be his 8th race, came touring in at the end of the parade lap. He had a problem with his electronic throttle, straight into the garage where the computer was changed, and he managed to get out onto the track about 3 minutes before the pit lane closed. That is Philippe Alliot, another French driver. He's starting in 10th position on the grid behind his teammate Eric Comas. They drive for the Larousse team. And considering that their cars have not got the very latest specification, by which I mean they don't have active suspension and they don't have a semi-automatic gearbox, they have done extremely well. It's going to be the usual story here, who is going to be into the first corner first, but in today's heat and a demanding race, the story again, as usual, is going to be about tyres, and Jonathan Palmer, you've been finding out about them.
That's right, and I think although tyres are obviously always important, perhaps none more so this year than here at Magny-Cours. It's a twisty circuit, lots of corners, indeed 12 of them. It's undulating, but the surface too is rather strange. And having little grip, drivers are forever complaining about the lack of it, but one that also seems to degrade the tyres as well. But of course the heat's the real killer. 28 degrees, the hottest Grand Prix we've had so far this year, and that makes the tyre choice a little bit complicated for one or two teams. Goodyear, of course, cannot test now. There are no tyre tests before the Grand Prix, and with the smaller tyres from this year, that puts an added strain, an added question mark about just what the right decision is. Well, virtually all the teams have gone for the softer B compound, which will give them more grip, but potentially wear out a little faster. With just two teams, we've got the Benetton drivers, Schumacher and Patrese, both opting for the harder A compound, and the Ferrari of Alesi too. Alesi's hard driving style particularly suiting, again going for the harder, more durable A compound tyre.
So we'll see how that develops. Remember, Damon Hill in pole position for the first time has got extra worry and responsibility on his shoulders. He has started from the second row of the grid 5 times already this year. Sorry, second position on the grid, not from the second row of the grid. And being that one place further forward puts a lot of pressure on you, particularly when you know that your teammate Alain Prost is sitting just behind your left shoulder. And we'll see who gets into the first corner first. Damon Hill has got an advantage. It's a staggered grid, which means to say that he's got a car. Well, you can see it, the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Damon Hill is starting top right. There's the confirmation. Alain Prost. Then the two Ligiers, Brundle and Blundell. 4 Renault engines in the first 2 rows of the grid. The first McLaren Senna, the first Ferrari Alesi. The first Benetton is Schumacher ahead of Rubens Barrichello, and that is a superb position for the young Brazilian. 8th on the grid, and so on. Karl Wendlinger, the Austrian driver, is starting from 11th place. Look for Derek Warwick, there he is, starting 15th in his footwork, 1 place ahead of Michael Andretti, who has managed to get out onto the grid in his correct position. Johnny Herbert starts 19th in the Lotus, and then the rest of the grid rolls through with Fabrizio Barbazza and Andrea De Cesaris bringing up the rear. And just one person who tried to qualify failed to do so. Sadly, again, it was the Italian veteran Michele Alboreto in the Lola Ferrari, which is improving, but not enough, and certainly not quick enough. Damon Hill. Eyes closed, and he's going through a big thinking period there, I'm quite sure. Calming himself down, making sure that he is in a correct mental condition to drop the clutch when the lights change to green and to get away from his first ever pole position. And that is in only his 10th Grand Prix, having driven in 2 Grand Prix for the Brabham team last year, one of them at Silverstone, where he will be driving for Williams next weekend. And this is the first time he's been right up front. The Williams cars are not both using ABS brakes for the first time, only Damon Hill is. And that is Jean Alesi, the Ferrari driver, who is in 6th position on the grid. His usual spectacular style. He just managed to get ahead of Michael Schumacher in the closing stages of yesterday's final qualifying period to take the last position on the 3rd row. There is Michael Schumacher. The Benetton, both for him and Riccardo Patrese, has proved difficult to set up in the 2 free practice periods and the 2 qualifying practice periods on Friday and Saturday. And that is Rubens Barrichello. He's only 21 years old. He comes from Brazil, a countryman of Ayrton Senna. This is his highest grid position, like Mark Blundell and Martin Brundle, and therefore the highest grid position for the Jordan Hart. There, next to Barrichello, Eric Comas in the Lamborghini-powered Larousse, the only driver that will be wearing spectacles in this race. 30 seconds to go to the final assembly lap, parade lap, call it what you will. 5 times winner, Alain Prost, of the French Grand Prix. He's never won here at Magny-Cours because his previous victories have been elsewhere in France, like the Paul Ricard circuit. And he wants to win this one, as of course does his arch rival Ayrton Senna, who has never won in France. So away they go on the parade lap, with Damon Hill having the responsibility of leading them round.
Now at the end of the pit straight, which we shall be seeing just now, the cars will be doing 185 miles an hour. They're now turning into the Estoril right-hander. Very high G-force corner here. You can just see a bit of tyre warming going on there, a bit of wriggling of the steering wheel. And that's going to be around about 140 miles an hour now. The 2 Ligiers weaving from side to side. You wouldn't think that getting extra tyre temperature was really going to be significant with this 44-degree track temperature. But these tyres need to work at some 90 to 100 degrees centigrade to get their true level of grip. So Ayrton Senna there, coming now down to the long straight, the fastest part of the circuit. Well, they'll be approaching, there they go, in fact, through the Adelaide hairpin. They will have been approaching that at some 185 miles an hour. Up through the gears, out of the, we can just see them disappearing through the Nürburgring right-left chicane, a very fast chicane, about 135 miles an hour before they go back down hard on the brakes to the 180-degree hairpin, taken in 2nd gear like the Adelaide hairpin. Once they've come out of that, they'll be round about at the halfway point around the circuit. See the field streaming through there, coming back up. There is Hill leading the way. approaching again 180 miles an hour when they are right on the limit. Now this next corner, the Imola chicane, is actually blind. As the cars turn in, just watch the way it dips down, which makes that first apex blind, and that's why it's the hardest corner on the circuit. And that's why drivers who are not experienced with the circuit tending to suffer here, whereas those two, a good example there, Comas and Alliot, have done all of their testing here. And that means that, in fact, in qualifying, just 200ths of a second separated those two, showing just what a high level of refinement both driving and car engineering gets to. So around there, that's the Chateau d'Eau corner, 100 miles an hour on the exit, perhaps 70 miles an hour midway through as they pull down towards the chicane, the penultimate corner before Lycée, and onto the start-finish straight.
I think this is the one thing you can criticise about this circuit. The corner you're looking at now, a very tight right-hander hairpin immediately before the start and finish straight. And you'll remember there were one or two incidents there last year. So Damon Hill now has kept the field down to a slow, steady speed in the hope of keeping it bunched up so that he and everybody else, when they stop on the grid, do not have to sit there with clutches out and risk burning the clutch out. Remember, watch Ayrton Senna in the background. Remember how he took off in Canada. He's on the left-hand side, 3 cars back. In Canada, his start was absolutely sensational, and he was up into 4th position from 8th position by the 2nd corner. Damon Hill on the left in pole position. The green is waving. Engine notes rising. Good start from Hill and Prost, and it looks to me like a clean start for everybody at the back. Prost is challenging Damon Hill as they come up into the right-hander, and behind, Martin Brundle and Mark Blundell are being challenged by Ayrton Senna, but it's no change from the grid as they go into the first right-hander. And now this is the hard part, flat out up to the Adelaide hairpin, and this is where Michael Schumacher took, and Martin Brundle is being challenged by Blundell as they come up to Adelaide. But they hold positions. Ayrton Senna is still 5th, behind him Schumacher, then the 2 Larousses. But Damon Hill is still leading in the Williams Renault, followed by Alain Prost, followed by the 2 Ligiers. So there is no change so far on the first lap. Now they're into the Grand Courbe at with the 180 in 3rd gear, accelerating away now up to 165 miles an hour into the Imola, right and left. It's Hill, Prost, Brundle, Blundell, Senna, Schumacher, Alesi, Barrichello, Eric Comas, and the rest of them coming through. Michael Andretti seems to have dropped down the field a bit. He started in 16th position on the grid, and Damon Hill is coming through in the lead at the end of lap 1 with 71 laps still to go. Damon Hill, Alain Prost, Martin Brundle, Mark Blundell, Ayrton Senna, the first 5. Schumacher is tucked up underneath Ayrton Senna's wing. Then it is Alesi in the Ferrari. They have all got through the first lap. 25 started, 25 have completed the first lap. Now, is Damon Hill, with a clear track and clean air in front of him, going to be able to break away? How hard is Prost going to fight? Are they going to have to stop for tyres, and if so, when? Well, the 2 Williams, who's had a second advantage over everybody, minimum, in the grid, the starting grid, are already starting a race of their own, but they're starting to bunch up behind. A puff of smoke from the back of Damon Hill's Renault. Problem, John?
Well, it could well be. That did indeed. And there we have, that looks like the Tyrrell of Katayama, just getting a bit wide on the curbs there, but getting it back together. But there's Prost. Now, Prost, in fact, is in the spare car, so he may not be that happy. Good clean start, looking back at that. I'm a little surprised to see that Senna was not able to forge his way past those 2 Ligiers. I'm sure that with his lighter fuel load, perhaps a little bit of circumspection that he might have expected from the 2 Ligier drivers, uncharacteristically high up, but obviously we're very pleased to see that. He may have tried to get by them, but he's now got Schumacher right on his back. They'll come into the frame now. Schumacher, of course, being on the harder tyres, as is Alesi, who is behind him. So back there with Prost, who's just a couple of seconds now, perhaps behind Hill.
Now, Damon Hill is pulling away. He led by 1.6 seconds at the end of the first lap. He led by 2.3 seconds at the end of the second lap. He's made the fastest lap of the race so far. I won't bother to tell you what the time was because it's irrelevant at this stage of the race with a very heavy fuel load. But there you can see the gap between the first and second. You couldn't see the gap between the second and third, Prost and Brundle, because it was too big at that point. In fact, Prost is now some nearly 3 seconds ahead, getting a real wiggle on from the front of the Williams as he goes into the corner there. I noticed that in the half hour in the warm-up this morning, he came in several times to check the handling of his car. It's still Martin Brundle third, it's still Mark Blundell fifth. He's still ahead of Ayrton Senna in fifth position. Mark Blundell in fourth position, Ayrton Senna is fifth, Schumacher is sixth, Lacey is seventh, and Martin Brundle, who was third for Benetton last year. He started a run of very good success for Benetton at about this time of the year, and it looks as though he's starting to do the same thing here, because Brundle has already got a third place under his belt at the San Marino Grand Prix in 1993. And he goes into the right-hander at the Grand Cours, now the Estoril. And I am very surprised, frankly, that everything is as spread out as it is at this stage of the race. Hill, Prost, Brundle, Blundell, Senna and Schumacher. That's the only real battle. And Senna will be keeping, and Schumacher attacks at exactly the same place as he did last year. But last year he attacked so forcibly that he drove into the back of Senna's McLaren and took him out. The race was stopped after 19 laps, and darn me if Schumacher didn't do the same thing with another driver, Stefano Modena, when the race was restarted.
Well, but with Schumacher now, the Benetton runs a very similar engine to that of the McLaren. That's Senna ahead of Schumacher. But what is different between the two cars is the amount of wing they're covering. And that looks like Zanardi there. That's Zanardi out of the Lotus. It's been a miserable weekend so far for Lotus. They've had trouble with engine over revs, with gear selection problems, the active not working particularly well. And that's really put an end to a pretty miserable weekend for Zanardi. But back to the McLaren-Benetton difference. Benetton are running a lot less wing than McLaren. That makes Schumacher at some 10 kilometers an hour faster at the end of the main straight into the Adelaide hairpin. And we saw Schumacher have a go at Ayrton into that Adelaide hairpin, having taken advantage clearly of that straight line speed. The race, I think, is shaping up much as we thought it might. We've got a two-car battle for the lead there between Hill and Prost. And then what I'm sure is going to be a fascinating battle between the two Ligiers and then Senna and then Schumacher. And it's worth bearing in mind that the Ligiers were actually slower than Senna and Schumacher in this morning's warm-up, although they were faster in qualifying.
We're with Schumacher now. He is in sixth position. Ahead of him is Ayrton Senna in the McLaren Ford. And incidentally, students of motor racing design and supply will be pleased to know that McLaren are going to get the same kind of engine from Ford that Benetton have been using all season for the British Grand Prix at Silverstone next Sunday. And Zanardi rejoins. So, well, I wonder whether he was pushed to restart or whether he managed to keep the engine running. I can't tell you whether he did, but if he was pushed to restart, he will be disqualified. You'll notice he's got the forward wing, the big wing. Lotus have been experimenting with both types, and it is still Mark Blundell staving off Ayrton Senna, and that's a great drive by the young Englishman, Mark Blundell, 27 years old, and he comes from Barnet. Although, to his credit is the fact that this, as Jonathan has told you, Magny-Cours is the home of the Ligier team. Their workshops are just a stone's throw away from here, and this is where they do all their testing. So if Ligier don't know this circuit, no one does. But all credit to Brundle and Blundell, who are third and fourth, as you watch Senna and Schumacher, and the German is not giving up.
You can see there very clearly how much difference that wing is making. Senna was a long way ahead of Schumacher out of the Estoril corner at 140 miles an hour, but Schumacher made up perhaps 6 or 7 car lengths all the way down towards the Adelaide hairpin. It wasn't enough to get by, but certainly he's putting heavy pressure on Senna. We've heard that Barrichello has actually passed the Lacey. This is a superb performance from the Brazilian in the Jordan, doing a great job, and that means that he'll be then right then behind Schumacher.
looking back, this rather weird camera angle from Ayrton Senna's McLaren at Schumacher's Benetton, which we're now with, looking forward at Senna's McLaren, and the race order on lap 6 coming to the end of it. We're with Senna again. Damon Hill leads Alain Prost by 1.8 seconds. In third position is Martin Brundle, who's now 8.5 seconds behind Prost. There is the battle for fourth position. Blundell, Senna and Schumacher. As Jonathan has just told you, up to 7th place magnificently has come young Rubens Barrichello. 8th is Alesi, 9th is Comas, 10th is Wendlinger, 11th is Suzuki in the footwork. In 12th position, Riccardo Patrese. Johnny Herbert is 18th. Senna versus Schumacher. We're on lap 7. It's a 72-lap race, so already, and it seems as though the race has only just started, we're almost 1/10 of the way through it. And Ayrton Senna, you probably saw the interview with him just before the race began, and he gave me the good news as Johnny Herbert is coming into the pits for new tyres. Senna gave me the good news on Thursday, but he's signed for McLaren, so the agony of wondering whether we're going to see Senna or Häkkinen, poor Mika Häkkinen, who's still waiting to drive for McLaren, has now been resolved by Ayrton Senna saying, I'm going to be there for the rest of the season. And that has to be good news, but he's one of the few men that can challenge the dominant Williams Renaults, which are out front now. We're on lap 8. You're looking at Damon Hill. He's led 3 Grand Prix before this year, but he has never led from pole position. He's still 1.6 seconds ahead of Alain Prost, who is keeping a watching brief.
Yes, as the laps go by, Prost is now just starting to inch up on Hill. He's now just 1.6 seconds off. I'm quite sure that his slight lack of confidence running that spare car, plus his natural conservatism at the start, was coming into play, but now he's feeling he's in the groove. He's been under a bit of pressure this weekend so far. Qualifying hasn't gone the way he would have liked it. He's broken that clean record to date of pole positions until Damon did that brilliant job, which was so popular here. But I'm sure that he's going to be working very hard to make sure that he can try and take a win on his home ground, and he's coming up behind Damon now.
Damon Hill has the fastest lap of the race so far, 1 minute 20.681, which is 3.6 seconds slower than Nigel Mansell's lap record of 1992 in the Williams Renault. But as we always say at this stage of the race, it's early days yet as far as lap times are concerned. They have a full fuel load. They're driving fairly conservatively by their standards, because you can see now that just as Mansell in the Williams Renault and Patrese in the Williams Renault last year dominated this race, so Prost and Hill are doing so this year. And this is the interest. We're with Michael Schumacher, 6th position. Ahead is Senna, there they are. And ahead of Senna is still Mark Blundell. And if Brundle and Blundell can stay where they are now to the end of the race, the flags will really be flying at Ligier in France, and especially at Renault, because Ligier have been in the wilderness for years. Cyril Derouvre, the wealthy French industrialist, bought the team from Guy Ligier over the winter and has injected new enthusiasm, new personnel and new procedures into the team. His object is to get 30 World Championship points this year, and already the Ligier team have scored 13 points from 7 races, so they're not doing at all badly. Katayama, the Japanese driver in the Tyrrell, Johnny nearly stalls his engine in for tyres, and we still have 25 runners. Zanardi is 4 laps down on account of stopping, as you saw, and then he rejoined the race. But there are no retirements at this stage of the race, and we're on lap 10 out of 72.
Now, what has to be a bit concerning for Senna at this stage is that Schumacher should be giving him such a hard time. Schumacher, we believe, is running on the harder A compound tyres, and so we might have expected him to start to close up, all other things being equal, in perhaps another 15 or 20 laps once the B tyres of Senna, the softer tyres, were starting to wear down. But that hasn't been the case, and it's going to be vitally important for Senna to try and keep some daylight as much as he can between him and Schumacher as they round that Estoril corner, the fast 140-mile-an-hour corner leading on to that main straight. He cannot afford to have Schumacher really close on the approach to that.
Now, somebody is trailing smoke, vapour of some kind. I just saw it as the picture changed there, and it looked suspiciously to me like one of the Williams, but so I'll keep a careful eye on it. You can see for yourself that on lap 10, as we come to the... Yes, I suspect it's Damon Hill's car, because the camera lens on Prost's car, which we're looking through now, has got liquid on it. And that liquid is certainly not coming from the track. It's certainly not coming from the atmosphere. What might it be, Jonathan?
Well, I'm pretty sure Damon knows he's got a problem. I saw him wave with his finger there. Now, whether he was indicating to Alain that he has a problem and that Alain should prepare to go by, I don't know, but that could be likely.
Watch, because we're with Damon Hill now, leading on lap 11 out of 72, having started from pole position. He's losing liquid from some part of the car. You're looking at Alain Prost, less than a second behind now, and the Frenchman smells the chance to get past Damon Hill's Williams Renault and take the lead and go on to win his French Grand Prix for the 6th time. Well, he smells the opportunity, but Damon Hill is still denying him the chance to finally get through. The gap is maintained. Prost closes up on braking as they go into the 180, about 65 miles an hour here. This is where they accelerate away up to 165 miles an hour, up to 180 miles an hour, approaching the Imola, and Katayama is out. Okio Katayama is out of the French Grand Prix for Tyrrell. And their dreadful season continues, because the young Japanese driver has already failed to finish in 6 of the 7 races he has driven in. So, back with Schumacher. Michael Schumacher in the... and I can't tell you what's happening there. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. It's the French pompiers who are busy with the foam, and you can see the results. Katayama out, and that is on lap 12 in the Tyrrell, and he's the first actual retirement. Zanardi, by the way, had an active suspension failure and managed to get home, presumably on the bump stops, and they've blown it up or fitted a new battery or a new whatever, and the Italian is back in the race. We're on lap 12. Damon Hill is just leading Alain Prost. Brundle in the Ligier is still third, now 13 seconds behind the leaders. Blundell is 5 seconds behind Brundle in 4th position. Senna is still 5th. Schumacher is still 6th. Barrichello is 7 seconds behind Schumacher. Alesi is in 8th position. 9th is Comas, and here they come. Alesi 8th in the Ferrari. Remember how brilliantly he drove last year in the wet on slicks. Comas is holding up extremely well. Behind Comas is Wendlinger in 10th position in the Sauber. Behind him is Aguri Suzuki in the footwork Mugen, fitted with active suspension for the first time this season. And poor Gerhard Berger in the 2nd Ferrari is down in 16th position. 12 laps completed. Another 60 to go. And you can watch, for the first time, a Larousse in a Grand Prix this year up at the front, putting in a real fighting drive. Yes, I do know that Philippe Alliot finished 5th at San Marino, but Comas is right up with the front men, apart from the 2 Williams cars. Ex-European Formula 3000 champion. In fact, he's been champion of every category he has driven in so far, except Formula 1. You saw his glasses behind the visor, and you see Suzuki in the background in the white footwork hanging on. So, 4 cars, 4 constructors, great racing.
Well, it's a shame that we can't see the Williams duo of Hill and Prost, because that water that was, or fluid that was coming out of Hill's car onto Prost's visor clearly looks concerning to me. It looks potentially terminal. You know, these Grand Prix cars are not designed to leak, clearly. Any fluid leak that does occur tends to get worse, and it would be a very, very sad thing indeed if Damon wasn't allowed to show his true potential, take his first Grand Prix win, if he does have a problem. But there we go, and there he's now, Prost now right up behind Hill as they accelerate up towards 180, 190 miles an hour for the curve. And there's a flash, there we are, there's some That looks like some steam or some smoke. It's on Prost's visor now. You can see that. It's going to be important for Prost not to make sure that he takes all his rip-offs off and leaves him with no vision to go later in the race. He'll need to keep some vision so that as and when the problem with Hill does go away, then he'll have some clear visor to see through.
Well, I hope Damon does manage to stay with Alain Prost, because the Frenchman is now 15, nearly 16 seconds ahead of Martin Brundle, who is in third position, and it would make a pretty quiet race out of it if Alain Prost was driving around by himself. But at the present moment, on lap 14 out of 72, Hill and Prost first and second. You can see them. Damon is not slowing up at all. They're both lapping a full second faster than Martin Brundle, who is third, and over a second faster than Ayrton Senna, second and a half second faster than Ayrton Senna, who is still in fifth position in the McLaren. And the two Ligier Renaults are maintaining their advantage over three-times world champion Ayrton Senna, as Damon Hill, followed by Prost, goes through to complete lap 14. The gap in terms of time really doesn't matter a lot. It's actually gone up by half a second, from 0.7 of a second to 1.3 seconds. And we're with Michael Schumacher. He's coming down to the chicane at the end of the lap into the Lycée, the second gear right-hander, as Senna closes right up behind Marc Blundell, who is in fourth position. Now, is it conceivable to you, Jonathan, that Schumacher is hanging back a bit at this stage of the race, watching pointers to make a charge later on? It's not really feasible to me, but it just might be.
Of course, it's not normally his style, but I think what is happening here is that we've got Marc Blundell actually holding up Senna. Marc is some 7 seconds now behind Martin, and those two have been incredibly evenly matched all the way through. So I'm sure that Marc has got some kind of problem. But the Ligier does have the Renault engine. It has the same specification Renault engine as the Williams cars, which means roughly 70 horsepower advantage over Senna. And looking at the warm-up times, I'm sure that both Senna and Schumacher could go quicker if Blundell was not holding them both up.
If there are going to be tyre stops in this race, and we think there are, they will be round about lap 25 onwards. It is now lap 14. Hill leads Prost by 1.3 seconds. Brundle is out on his own. 7 seconds now ahead of this being Blundell and Senna. And Marc Blundell is getting a lesson in real pressure now, because all the time in his mirrors he can see that distinctive red and white shape of the McLaren Ford, driven by Ayrton Senna. And Senna is getting closer and closer all the time. He's lapping about 0.2 of a second faster than Blundell, therefore closing up on him a bit. And you will have noticed that Schumacher too is easing up on Ayrton Senna, that we're riding with, who's just got some tyre rubber thrown up onto the lens of the camera on the right-hand side of the McLaren. Fortunately, it has a plastic strip which they can move across and keep the lens clear. So the next shot we see from Senna's McLaren should be a clear one. Blundell, fourth position. Senna, fifth position. Schumacher in sixth place. And behind him, it's Barrichello. And I would not be at all surprised to see Rubens Barrichello finish in the points for Jordan. If he did, that would be the first time that Eddie Jordan's team had scored a point this year. Richly deserved. Because if all the top six finish the French Grand Prix, I will be rather surprised. Alesi is still in 8th position, 12 seconds now behind Barrichello as the leaders go through onto lap 17. So you're looking at the Ligier. It has not got the advanced specification that the Williams Renault has got. It's got the same Renault V10 engine. Here is Martin Brundle on his own. And you can see what a gap he's pulled out over his teammate, Marc Blundell. When I talked to them yesterday after their tremendous success of finishing third and fourth at the end of practice on the grid, I said to Marc Blundell, are you happy? He said, well, I've beaten the old man to it. And the old man, of course, is Martin Brundle, that you are looking at now, who is all of 34 years old, compared with Marc Blundell, who is 27 years old. So there's not a lot in it.
Now, it's clearly a great weekend so far for the Ligier team. And one may wonder just why they are so competitive here. Now, in fact, with Formula One regulations, in the very laudable interests of some degree of economy, it stipulates that teams must designate a circuit, normally their local circuit, for doing all of their testing. Now, Ligier are based near here, so Magny-Cours is their designated circuit, as it is with the Larousse team, and so they spent a great deal of time pounding round here, unlike most of the others.
Damon Hill goes through. He's now on another lap. He just crossed the line to start his 18th lap. You saw just before that tremendous scrap with Gerhard Berger in 16th place, leading Johnny Herbert, Warwick Bardeur and Fittipaldi. And the fastest lap that we have so far is still that of Damon Hill, 1 minute 20.7. So they're maintaining about the same race pace. In fact, they've slowed down quite a lot, they being the two Williams. And this is going to be very interesting. Coming up now, the students of race history, and somebody's gone on the dust. Let's have a look to see who that is. It's a Lotus. It's Johnny Herbert. Johnny Herbert out. Oh dear. Poor Lotus, poor Herbert. Well, Jonathan Palmer is so used to interviewing the unfortunate Johnny Herbert when he's retired, but Johnny getting out of the cockpit. That's yet another race, and there he spins. Now you can see Berger being chased, and that's Gerhard Berger that just went out of the shot, followed by Derek Warwick, followed by Luca Badoer, well up in the Lola Ferrari, as Johnny Herbert spins out of the race, and that is his fourth retirement of 1993, riding with Prost.
Well, that's another blow to the Lotus team, but Johnny has been complaining of difficult handling with the Lotus. Of course, it's got the active suspension, and it looked like it caught him out there. I don't think there's any sign of anybody actually touching him. But what's interesting here is that, having said that, that Damon looks like to have a potentially terminal problem, his lap times certainly don't indicate it. He's maintaining a cushion over Prost, although Prost is probably not going to be. And now we've got some interesting times now with Damon starting to do some lapping, and Prost right behind. He'll be concerned to try and keep that distance throughout this section.
Yeah, they've just gone past Thierry Boutsen, the Jordan driver, and Boutsen is in 19th place. Now they're coming up to Luca Badoer, who is 18th in the Lola Ferrari. And this is a real test for Damon Hill, because he's got to pick the moment to get past the man in the front, hopefully making it impossible for Alain Prost to follow him through, as he did there, taking Luca Badoer. Now, the next challenger after Luca Badoer is Christian Fittipaldi, and then Derek Warwick. So, look for the Minardi with Christian Fittipaldi in that very distinctive yellow helmet, which mirrors that of his father, Wilson Fittipaldi, who used to drive in Grand Prix. Over the line, another lap completed, 19 completed. They're on lap 20, and Damon Hill is now coming up to Christian Fittipaldi, who is in 18th position. Watch. Let's see what Alain Prost does about it too. Now they're coming up to the Adelaide hairpin. They're doing about 190 miles an hour here. And Prost is looking for the opportunity to get by. Damon Hill denies it, moves out just at the right moment to get past Christian Fittipaldi, who stays wide. And you remember that Prost and Fittipaldi had a coming together in a major way in the Brazilian Grand Prix, which took both of them out in the wet at the beginning of this year. Prost is now really pushing Damon Hill. He's applying maximum pressure as Hill comes up to lap Derek Warwick's footwork Mugen. Active suspension for the first time. That's the McLaren active suspension, which Footwork are using. And Gerhard Berger is ahead of Warwick. So the Ferrari is about to be lapped on lap 20. Terrible indignity. Berger, incidentally, has not been at all well over the practice period.
Yeah, that's right. And talking about Ferrari, in fact, Alesi, don't forget, although he's running, and just a...
Yeah, Prost, sorry, Jonathan, Prost is pushing again. Alain Prost is now. Hill goes through, and all credit to Damon Hill. He's driving beautifully. He's very inexperienced compared with Alain Prost, but he's judging the moment absolutely right to carve through the field. And Gerhard Berger has come in for tyres very early on lap 21. Top left corner of your screen, that was the Ferrari of Austrian Gerhard Berger. And Damon Hill maintains his lead over Alain Prost.
I'm sure having carved through those back markers without any problem is going to be a great relief to Damon. He had an incident in second qualifying yesterday when in fact he thought that the slow-running Alboreto in the Lola had seen him. He hadn't. And although Alboreto lost his right rear corner, Damon could have had his car damaged. It wasn't in fact, but I'm sure he'll be pleased that on this occasion the slower cars seem to have seen him. Well, he's well clear now of the back markers. He's a half a second ahead of Prost, with that problem apparently having abated.
And you will have seen Christian Fittipaldi take the opportunity to nip past Derek Warwick, and out goes A. Ligier, and it's that of Mark Blundell on lap 21. Out goes the fourth place car of Mark Blundell, and that means to say, of course, that now Ayrton Senna can move up and try to close the gap between himself and Martin Brundle, which is a very big gap. It's about 8 seconds. Now, I don't know what Blundell's problem was, obviously, but look at this. This is the battle. As into the pits comes Thierry Boutsen in the Jordan Hart. And by the way, Blundell went off on the Estoril bend, which is very, very quick indeed. And you're watching the tyre stop of Belgian Thierry Boutsen, who has disappointed the Jordan team, I think it would be fair to say, since he joined them 3 races into the season after Ivan Capelli had been invited to look for employment elsewhere. And we're back again with Alain Prost on lap 22, 50 laps therefore to go. And one cannot help feeling that Damon Hill is now under very real pressure and a threat to his lead.
He's certainly under that, but what is good news for Damon is that from looking at Prost Visor, looking at his field of vision, Damon does not seem to be losing fluid, and indeed that's something which the Williams team seem to have seen too. They know that Damon did have a problem losing fluid, they didn't know what it was, but again it seems to have settled down, which is great news for Damon. He's going to be feeling the pressure of Prost. It's his home Grand Prix. He's going to be clearly very determined. There's nobody more wily and with greater strategy than Prost. But he'll be determined, Damon will be determined to stay out there in front as long as he can, as he closes up on one of the Larousse cars.
Yes, and don't be fooled by Alain Prost saying, I do not care too much about the French Grand Prix. I'm after points. He cares about the French Grand Prix, all right. It's his home territory. This is the one that really matters to him. And if he can make it 6 wins in France instead of the 5 that he's already got, he would be delighted. Quite apart from the fact that a win gives him 10 points instead of 6 in the World Championship, and he's going for it again. And yet again, Damon Hill just quietly and unobtrusively closes the door fairly in the face of the Frenchman. And Damon Hill is on his way up now to lap, it looks like Philippe Alliot to me in the Larousse. So round go the Williams together. Lap race order on lap 23, Hill and Prost that you see. Martin Brundle now in 3rd position. It is Philippe Alliot who they are about to lap, and the Frenchman is in 14th place. The next man to attack will be JJ Leto in the Sauber Ilmor. Damon Hill goes through. Now, yet again, he has managed to put a car between himself and Alain Prost as he goes into a series of corners. The chicane before the Lycée right-hander at the end of the lap. And there's a lot of activity at the end of the pit lane. There is, it's a Larousse that's gone in. And there's the Sauber, so that would probably have been Carl Wendlinger. Anyway, we're on lap 24 now. Prost, 0.6 of a second, if time matters to you, behind Damon Hill, as the 2 Williams Renaults dominate this race. Now 24 seconds ahead of Martin Brundle. And it's under circumstances like this, and there's a retirement. JJ Leto is out of the French Grand Prix on lap 24, and that will probably be quite a relief to him because he's had an awful practice.
Absolutely. Normally, JJ Leto and teammate Wendlinger have been very evenly matched throughout the year, but for some unknown reason of immense frustration to JJ, he's been off the pace every practice session, every qualifying session. So we've got the 2 Williams cars out there, but what we haven't seen, sadly, is a playback, a slow motion perhaps of the Blundell incident. It looked like he went off at very high speed at the Estoril corner. I suspect he had some kind of problem that eventually caught him out, but what was going to be Blundell's misfortune has helped Senna, because Senna is now catching up at about a second a lap on Martin Brundle, ahead in 3rd place
And so, therefore, is Michael Schumacher, who is 2 seconds behind Senna. Now, to clarify things, we're on lap 24. We're with Prost in second place. That is Damon Hill ahead. Martin Brundle in the Ligier is in third place. Senna is in fourth position, just ahead of Schumacher, fifth. Barrichello is now in the points for Jordan for the first time this year, and the first time ever for Barrichello, first time this year for Jordan. Alesi is 7th, Suzuki is 8th, Andretti is in 9th position, Riccardo Patrese is 10th. The leaders have lapped everybody up to Riccardo Patrese, including, of course, Eric Comas, who is 11th in the Larousse. This is super slow motion, and you can see how the active suspension of the Williams works. You can see the G-forces, even at this low speed, operating on the driver as they go into the Lycée, and they're now on their 25th lap. Both Williams running reliably, and of course in the here comes Gerhard Berger being pursued by Martin Brundle, who is about to lap the Austrian. Martin Brundle is in third place. Gerhard Berger is in 15th position. And Berger, unlike Alesi, has not been able to get to grips with the new active suspension. Into the pits of the Ferrari, into the pits comes one of the... It's Riccardo Patrese, and that was a very quick, very quick stop. 5.43 seconds for Riccardo Patrese to take on 4 new wheels and tyres. Lap 26 now. This is the Adelaide hairpin. You can see the gigantic banked grandstands full of spectators, eagerly hoping to see a victory for France, and Martin Brundle into the pits, third position. Now Brundle is only a short distance ahead of Ayrton Senna, so that means the Brazilian will go through into third position, but that was a good stop, an excellent stop for Martin Brundle, who's now out on new rubber and should be in sixth position. I say should be because I didn't see Schumacher or Senna for that matter go through, because like you, I'm looking at the monitor. But we'll soon know, as on lap 26, with neither of the Williams having made a pit stop and both of them coming up to catch Michael Andretti and lap him, and he's in 9th position. There goes Prost. Well, hats off to Damon Hill, because when you're a comparatively new driver in Grand Prix racing, being at the front from the very start and having pressure as Alesi goes out of the pits like Prost is exerting on Hill must be very unsettling.
Absolutely, but I think Damon has handled the thing so very well indeed. He did make a mistake in that first Grand Prix of the year at Kyalami, but since then he really has been superb. And having triple world champion Prost behind you, at third distance in your home Grand Prix, you've out-qualified him, and that is certainly going to really put the pressure on him. And still, he's not driving badly. He's very safe indeed.
Senna into the pits, and Senna was in third place, and Schumacher is in as well. 5.7 seconds. There is Schumacher ahead, so that should mean that Martin Brundle will be back in third position. But at this stage of the race, with people coming into the pits, taking on new tyres, leaving, taking varying times to make the changes, it's always very difficult to spot the positions. Well, let things settle down a bit as Damon Hill and Alain Prost, first and second, coming up to complete their 27th lap, close on Andretti. Now, this is undeniably Alain Prost's opportunity to get through. Andretti's got a Lotus ahead of him. That must be Zanardi. Into the pits. We're into the pits with Damon Hill. Now, watch this tyre stop. It's happening right underneath me. Not brilliant. And Andretti goes out. 7.47 seconds is good by yours and my standards, but not all that brilliant by Formula One standards. I remember Ayrton Senna came in recently and did a stop, all 4 tyres and wheels, in under 5 seconds. So Alain Prost now leads the French Grand Prix, and whether or not he retains that lead will depend on how slick the Williams team are when he comes in to change his tyres and wheels. If they take longer than 7.47 seconds, He'll lose the lead. If they don't, he may well retain it. I say may well because Damon Hill won't be wasting time now. He's on new tyres. He's got better grip than he had before. That's why he came in, to get better grip. Now this is the end of the lap. Alain Prost should come in now, because he should come in immediately after his teammate. And you see a problem there. And ahead is Andretti's McLaren Ford. And Prost, I believe we're with Prost now. Can't be absolutely sure until I see his helmet. Yes, indeed, that was Alain Prost, and he is now on his 29th lap, and he is leading still.
Well, Prost has obviously got a clear track ahead of him now, and he's just put in the fastest lap, or his fastest lap, of a 21.0, making full use of that he's got. Damon, of course, now on his new set of tyres, but we've also got the battle back there. Martin Brundle and Senna and Schumacher, all of whom made those stops very quickly, and we should see quite soon just how effective McLaren pit work is compared to Ligier pit work.
Well, Prost is now actually leading by 17.5 seconds, because when you're looking at the Lola of Luca Badoer making a stop now, Prost leading by 17 seconds from Damon Hill, who is 13 seconds ahead of Martin Brundle in third place, who is 4 seconds ahead of Senna, who is fourth, who is 3 seconds ahead of Schumacher, who is in fifth place. So the tyre changes thus far have not made any difference to the running order. You're looking at Schumacher now in fifth position, but Alain Prost has yet to come in. And you may well say, well, 7 seconds for a tyre stop and 17 seconds lead means he'll be 10 seconds ahead. But you forget that he has to slow down, stop, and he's coming in now. Alain Prost coming in on lap 29. Remember, Damon Hill's time, just over 7 seconds. And the Williams team can afford to be very relaxed about everything. And out he goes, marginally quicker than Damon Hill. So the status quo could well be as it was before. Well, we'll know shortly, but Alain Prost rejoins the Magny-Cours circuit at Nevers in today's very hot conditions to run through the rest of the race on the set of tyres that he has just had fitted. And he is on lap 30. And he's coming down to catch, and look how close it is. The two Williams absolutely together, and Damon Hill is in second place behind Prost, and he knows that if he can't get Prost now, he probably won't, because Prost is on new tyres, and Damon Hill is on tyres that are a couple of laps old. They'll be gripping that much better. They'll be that much hotter than the tyres of the French world champion. Wonderful scrap for the lead of the French Grand Prix at just under half distance, with Alain Prost leading. Damon Hill second, Martin Brundle behind them in third position. Fourth is Senna, fifth is Schumacher, but this is the excitement. Watch it. And they're coming up to lap, midfield men. Now that's Andretti ahead again, I do believe. Andretti is in 10th position. Now, if he gets in the way of there is Gerhard Berger, and he is going to be caught and passed by the two Williams very quickly indeed. Gripping better, holding the track better, going faster. I was saying earlier on, but didn't finish, that the Ferrari driver, especially Berger, have not come to grips with the revised John Barnard designed active suspension system on the Ferrari. That is Luca Badoer in the Lola, and he's obviously got a major handling problem, because he's just about at the slowest part of the course now, running off on the approach to the Lycée as Eric Comas goes through, and the Frenchman is in 7th position behind Rubens Barrichello, and Luca Badoer is out. So that is Katayama out, Herbert out, Mark Blundell out, JJ Leto out, Luca Badoer out, and the left rear wheel you saw for yourselves was the problem, broken suspension, I suspect. Oh, lap 31, 72 lap race. Jonathan.
Well, we saw after those pit stops that in fact Martin Brundle came out 4 seconds ahead of Ayrton Senna, so McLaren made up 1.5 seconds, possibly even 2 seconds on the pit stop, but now Senna is just 1.5 seconds behind the Ligier Brundle. Now the Ligier has got, and we've got, this must be Hill being waved by a Lacey there. A Lacey running on the harder tyres, thanking him nice and polite racing at the front end. Alesi running on the harder tyres, but also having a huge fuel load, running some 30 kilos heavier than probably any other cars at the start of the race because of the thirst that the Ferrari engine has, and sadly it doesn't even make up for it on the straights because the Ferrari is about 2/3 of the way down the rankings in terms of straight line speed.
Now, Jonathan, I cynically ask myself a question as we ride with Ayrton Senna now, and that question is, given that Alain Prost of France is in the lead in France, will he fight for the end, or will he be allowed to win without any real opposition from Damon? What's your view?
Well, it's a complicated situation. I think one has to be very aware of the fact that the Williams team have an obligation to many quarters. It's not simply just the drivers. They have an obligation to the sponsors, to the engine suppliers, etc. And there we've got a hand there. That looks like a problem there for... That's Senna. That's Senna with a problem.
Yeah, I don't think he's saying, look at my dirty glove, because he was slowing right down there. Ayrton Senna in 4th position behind Brundle, in which case, now there is the Brazilian, and he's coming up behind Derek Warwick, forcing his way through. Oh, he looks okay. Maybe he was signalling to another driver and we really didn't know because we were so close up on him. But we're on lap 33 now in this 72-lap French Grand Prix. So coming up towards half distance with Prost and Hill fighting for the lead, and they are fighting. And Damon Hill's fastest lap of 1 minute 20.68 still remains, which makes me feel that they're well off their fastest pace, because they're lapping now much slower than that speed. So Prost leads, Hill in 2nd position, and now with 3rd position Martin Brundle. He's 35 seconds behind the leaders. Senna in 4th position, and Brundle is staving off the Brazilian and showing every sign of finishing 3rd in France for the 2nd year in succession. On lap 33, Michael Schumacher is 2 seconds behind Senna. There's the proof. There is Senna. There is Schumacher. They have both lapped the 2 footwork cars of Derek Warwick and Aguri Suzuki, who are battling for 15th position. Look at them. Warwick on the left, coming towards us now, behind Michael Schumacher, who has lapped him, and Warwick's Japanese teammate Aguri Suzuki, the ex-Formula 3000 champion of Japan, is trying to displace his teammate and take 15th position, and he's not succeeding.
We were talking then about perhaps politics or rather strategy between and team instructions between Damon Hill and Alain Prost, and I think it would be fair to say that Williams will be very concerned to make sure that they try and extend their championship lead. At the moment Prost is 5 points ahead of Senna, but things can happen very quickly. I'm sure Williams will have the memory of Monaco, possibly the nightmare of Monaco, in their minds, and so I think there'll be a lot of pressure here, particularly in France, for Williams to have a policy of letting Prost win, providing that Prost is right on the pace and he's not slowing up Damon Hill at all. Of course, if that's the case, and if anyone, particularly Senna, can pressurize Damon, we can expect to see Damon being waved straight through past Prost, if indeed he can do so. But he's still hanging on well there, right up with Prost. And interestingly, as we heard earlier on, that Damon is running ABS braking for the first time. It's taken a long time to get this system onto racing cars, for 2 reasons. A, because it's heavy, B, because it's complex, but finally now, with the use of no less than 2 onboard computers, just Damon has this system, and that's because it's got a question mark over reliability. If both cars had it and there was a problem, then clearly both cars could go out. I don't think it's a big advantage at this stage, but in wet weather conditions, it certainly would be, and I'm sure that it'll continue to improve over the next few races.
Martin Brundle, there he is, number 25 in the blue and white. Ligier Renault is carving his way through the field. He's now up with Philippe Alliot's Larousse, and the Frenchman is in 13th position, so Martin Brundle 3rd is trying to, and soon will, I think, lap Alliot's Larousse in 13th place. And in front of Alliot is Gerhard Berger in 12th position. And in front of Gerhard Berger is Riccardo Patrese, 11th in the Benetton. And Martin Brundle's got a problem now. He's got a lot of extra power compared with Alliot, who is notoriously not the easiest man in the world to get past. and Alliot will be concerned about his battle, and Brundle is right up alongside the Larousse now, which is just as well, because you can see that Ayrton Senna in the McLaren is doing his usual forceful bit of driving, and he's through alongside Larousse, and Senna in 4th position is closing right up on Martin Brundle. The Englishman has got a major problem on lap 35. Here he is in slow motion, and that is Alliot going through Martin Brundle, and you see the McLaren Ford in the background with Ayrton Senna now as Martin Brundle laps somebody else in front of him. We're with Senna. Now there is the Williams Renault of Damon Hill leading. The 3rd place man Martin Brundle, and Alain Prost has just done a quick lap there, as you saw for yourselves, with Damon Hill hanging on. So the 2 Williams Renaults are completely dominating this race. Prost, Hill, Brundle, Senna is the order. Schumacher in 5th position. Rubens Barrichello in a magnificent 6th. I do hope, if I may, JB, just a little partisan, that Barrichello succeeds in staying there, because the Jordan team desperately need a point. They have not scored one in the World Championship this year yet, as for that matter have not the Tyrrell team. Most of the others have, and they're coming down now to complete their 36th lap. They do so, that is half distance of the French Grand Prix completed. Prost leading Hill by the distance that you can see from Damon Hill's cockpit. And it's a long gap now before Brundle, but we have got 2 battles at the front. We've got Prost versus Hill for the lead. We've got Brundle versus Senna for 2nd place. And with the leaders at the point on the circuit where you can see them, we're still waiting for Brundle and Senna to go through. That's how much of a lead the 2 Williams Renaults have got over everything else in the race. And of course, if they stay where they are now, it's going to be 16 points in the Constructors' World Championship to the Williams team. And they're already leading McLaren by a very substantial margin. Lap 37, Prost, Hill, Brundle, Senna, and there are 3 seconds, 2.8 seconds cover Brundle, Senna and Schumacher now, who are battling for 3rd, 4th and 5th places, and the leaders have lapped everybody up to the 6th place man, Rubens Barrichello, at half distance. It really is no contest between the Williams team and the rest. There is, of course, an enormous amount of political controversy going on in the Formula One world now about the extent to which advanced systems like active suspension, semi-automatic gearbox, traction control, ABS brakes, and Damon Hill has all 4 of those things, should be permitted. The argument being that they're very expensive, only some teams can afford them, and they should be prepared to relinquish them in order to make the racing more competitive. Well, it's an endless argument. I'm not going to get into it now. And we're with Ayrton Senna now, and he's coming up behind one of the footwork cars, I do believe, as they go in, as he goes into the right-left at the end of the lap. And we're back now with Damon Hill. You can see the rip-off on his visor in the bottom right corner of your screen, and he's on lap 38. Michael Andretti's having a good race, I'm glad to say. For once, he's only succeeded in finishing in the points once this year, 5th position in Spain, and he's in 8th position at the moment. We're on lap 38. The leader's coming through to complete it. Prost, Hill, then Brundle 3rd, Senna 4th, Schumacher 5th, Barrichello is 6th, and the last man not to be lapped, just gone through, and he soon will be lapped. Comas is 7th. Andretti is 8th, Alesi is in 9th position in the Ferrari, in 10th position is Fittipaldi, 11th is Patrese, and 12th is Gerhard Berger. The leaders into the right-hander at Estoril. They're doing about 150 miles an hour and accelerating as they come up to Golf Corner. That's 190 miles an hour here. Then the brakes go hard on, the ABS brakes for Damon Hill in 2nd place, the conventional ones for Alain Prost leading. We're getting a repeat of the Mansell versus Patrese battle in France this year, except that it's Prost versus Hill. And they're now on their way to the Nürburgring, right and left, which they've just traversed. Brakes hard on for the 180, as it's called, second gear, turn 8, 65 miles an hour. Brundle and Senna and Schumacher. Third, fourth and fifth, lap 39. Want to put some money on it, Jonathan?
Well, it looks like Prost is in control there, but I think Damon is doing an absolutely sterling job there. He's pushing hard all the way, and that's just what he needs to do. Even if team policy dictates that Prost should win here at his home Grand Prix, if Damon can be right in his wake, right there within half a second, all the way to the flag, that will be every bit as good, I'm sure, in many people's minds, as having won the race. But here we're looking at Martin Brundle here, having one of the best races of his career. He's inevitably going to be holding up Senna. Senna has actually set a faster lap than he set at this point, but Senna, of course, has less power. He has that 70 horsepower less. He's got a lot more wing on the car compared to Schumacher, so it's going to be hard for Senna to get close enough to get by Brundle, and that's what he needs to do. Of course, when he had Blundell ahead of him, Mark eventually went off or had a problem, and that allowed him to close up on Martin here. The Ligier is going extraordinarily well. They don't have active suspension, in fact. The only team running at the front to rely just on coil springs and dampers like conventional road cars. Everything else having hydraulic struts, effectively, which raise and lower the car's suspension to keep it essentially on an even keel. And that's really what active suspension is all about. These cars work at their most efficient condition when they are, as they are now, dead flat, not rolling, not pitching front to rear, to keep the aerodynamics absolutely on the limit. And active suspension maintains that situation. As we watch Schumacher there, coming down now towards, from the main straight down towards this Adelaide hairpin. And in fact, when they get on the brakes at this point, I had a look at the McLaren computer, when they brake hard from 180 miles an hour, they slow from 180 down to 40 in just 2.5 seconds. That's 180 miles an hour to 40 in just 2.5. Quite extraordinary.
So Senna third, Schumacher there Senna is fourth and Schumacher is in fifth position. And as Jonathan has said, the McLaren and the Benetton are very evenly matched. Martin Brundle may have a power advantage, but both the other cars behind him have undoubtedly got a handling advantage, and it's just about cancelling out. Martin Brundle was understandably very hurt when he was dropped by the Benetton team at the end of 1992, but very pleased when he got the chance to continue his Formula One career with Ligier, and he certainly grasped it with both hands, having already had a third position this year in the Ligier Renault, and he did that at San Marino, and he's been in the points twice before as well this season in the Ligier Renaissance. Prost leads, and into the commentary box now has come Mark Blundell, who qualified magnificently in fourth position on the grid, who went out of the race in fourth place. Now, I'm watching the monitor, Mark, as you are, but you went off. We don't know what happened. What did?
Well, basically I came up to lap de Cesaris, and we came into Estoril, the fast corner, fifth gear. I was right behind him. He took a very tight, very slow line, and I obviously thought he was just letting me go through just so I could maintain momentum. And I went round the outside of him all the way to the exit, and obviously he didn't see me because he just pushed me straight off.
Are you being fairly polite in saying that, Mark?
I'm being polite at the moment, but I won't be polite when I see him.
Right, now listen, the Ligier has been going magnificently. Your teammate Martin Brundle is holding third place as I talk to you, ahead of Senna and Schumacher. Do you have any handling, power or other reservations about his ability to stay where he is?
No, I'm very glad he's running up there third still, and I hope he can get to the end of the race because the team deserve it. They've done a fantastic job.
Tell us a little about it, Mark, because you're an Englishman in France these days, and there was a lot of criticism about you and Martin being appointed to drive two very French cars in a very French team. What's it like working from Magny-Cours?
It's good fun. I mean, the team are fantastic. Obviously, there is a little bit of media attention because two Brits in the French team. But we're doing the best we can, and I think they're appreciating it. So, you know, whatever the media say, the team are happy, and that's the main thing.
Et parlez-vous français maintenant?
No.
Right, Jonathan.
Mark, it seemed that in those first few laps you were gradually slipping back from Martin. I thought you probably had some kind of problem to account for it, because normally you are so incredibly evenly matched. What was going on there?
Well, basically, Jonathan, we've been struggling with rear caliper temperatures, and the rear calipers on the brakes gone up to a very high temperature, and that was causing me knock off on the brake pedal. It was very soft. On the quick corners, you probably see I could maintain the gap, but on the slow stuff, I was very uneven into the braking areas, and that was causing me to slow up.
Very hard luck indeed.
Mark, thank you very much. Better luck next time at the British Grand Prix at Silverstone in 1 week's time. The Ligier should go well there, as the Williams Renaults are going well here. As you can see, lap 43 now, out of 72. Alain Prost continues to lead 0. Damon Hill there, and it's now 1.8 seconds. Prost is putting the hammer down a bit. He's just lapped 7/10 of a second faster than Damon Hill. Both the Ligiers remain faster than everything else on the circuit. In third position, Martin Brundle is now 44 seconds behind the flying Williams, and he's only 1 second ahead of Ayrton Senna, who is only 1 second ahead of Schumacher. So it may be not exactly processional, but very convincing for the lead. But there's the battle for third position as the slow motion camera takes Ayrton Senna in fourth position through the S's, behind Martin Brundle and ahead of Schumacher. And that's Gerhard Berger accelerating out of the pits, having changed all 4 tyres and wheels on his Ferrari. Fastest lap so far is Alain Prost, 1 minute 20.530. And we're on lap 44. So we have to wait a long time now after the 2 Williams have gone through. And you see Berger there having rejoined on fresh rubber. You can see that the tyres are glistening in the light there. They'll be pretty hot. They'll have had the tyre warmers on them for a long time before Berger came in to get them up to race temperature, almost up to race temperature, not quite. And Gerhard Berger is travelling ahead of Rubens Barrichello in the Jordan Hart. Brian Hart's V10 is having its first season of Grand Prix racing, and he and his colleagues have made a jolly good job of it too. There's the young Brazilian, and he is a long way now ahead of Eric Comas, who is 7th. Michael Andretti is still running in 8th position. Alesi is the leading Ferrari, 9th place. Fittipaldi is 10th. Patrese is in 11th position. Philippe Alliot is 12th. Thierry Boutsen is in 13th position. And behind Thierry Boutsen, Derek Warwick 14th. His teammate Suzuki is still behind him, 15th. Gerhard Berger that we're looking at is 16th. And the leaders are now on lap 45. Damon Hill has closed up a bit. And in the inset, you see Jean Todt, who is the new Ferrari team manager. Yet another new person at Ferrari, but hopefully he's just the man they require. As Suzuki goes for it, he was just taking the opportunity there as Derek Warwick came up behind Andrea de Cesaris to try and take his teammate. Andrea de Cesaris in the blue Tyrrell is in 17th position. And he's well down. He's going to be taken soon. In fact, he has been taken by both Warwick and Suzuki, who are fighting as Prost and Hill come scything through to lap de Cesaris for the 2nd time. And you heard a rather aggrieved Mark Blundell saying that he would be finding the Italian to have probably a fairly acid interview with him. Andrea de Cesaris had a very torrid reputation in the past and had largely got out of it, but occasionally has lapses and gets in people's way, or is alleged by the people who hit him to have got in their way. And Mark Blundell certainly did that. We're on lap 46 now. Williams Renault leads. Williams Renault second. Ligier Renault is in 3rd position. So Renault engines in France, where they are made at Viry-Châtillon in Paris, continue to dominate their home Grand Prix. And Prost goes through now and tries to take Suzuki, who doesn't move over, which gives Damon Hill the opportunity to move up. Now we will see whether Damon Hill is really fighting for the lead or maintaining station.
Well, we may do, but Damon's going to have to be very careful indeed not to trip up over Alain, his teammate. And in these kind of situations, when he knows that Prost is looking ahead, he's got to get by the footwork cars. And it's very easy for Prost to get slowed up, to get wrong-footed. And Damon, and there we have in the pits, and that's a Benetton, and it looks like it's Patrese. Patrese in the pits. Patrese in the pits there.
Yeah, in 11th place when he came in, and so that's the second time that the Italian has stopped. He's on his 46th lap now. He came in earlier. He was worried about tyre wear in the warm-up this morning, and it looks as though his worries as far as his drive in the Benetton were concerned were absolutely correct. And this is Alain Prost and Damon Hill. They're now on their 47th lap out of 72, continuing to lap tail enders for the second time. And that is Aguri Suzuki in the Footwork Mugen that they're behind now. They're going to lap him for the second time if the Japanese driver moves over. And they're doing, as I said earlier on, about 190 miles an hour as they approach the Adelaide hairpin here. Suzuki stays wide, fortunately for Damon Hill, who nips through. And now they're on the 160 mile an hour approach to the Nürburgring right and left. If these corner names you find are a bit confusing, we are in France, but the corners are named after other circuits like Nürburgring, Adelaide, Estoril, and so on. Alain Prost is past, Damon Hill is past, but they're not past Derek Warwick.
It's always a real relief for drivers like Prost or Hill or anybody that when you've got two squabbling teammates ahead of you, in this case, of course, Warwick and Suzuki, you're never quite sure how much they're looking in their mirrors and how much they're just looking at each other to make sure that they don't lose out. But clearly, with particularly somebody of Derek's caliber, Derek Warwick's caliber, he's looking around him and he knows what's going on. But I think what's good news now is that Damon is still running very strongly indeed after lap 46, and it was round about lap 6 a long time ago when he had that problem, when there seemed to be the vapor coming out of the car. So I think it's fair to say that we can assume that that's now passed and that his car is running healthily.
Well, I hope you're right. We need this excitement at the front of the race as Prost pulls through. Derek Warwick knows his place. He knows he's in a slower car. He will know from his mirrors that it's the race leaders that are bearing down on him. He makes no effort to keep them back, rightly so. Moves over, lets them through to lap him. Them being Alain Prost, race leader, on target for a 6th Grand Prix win in France, having already won as long ago as 1981 for Renault. And Martin Brundle into the pits from 3rd place. So Ayrton Senna will have gone through to 3rd position. And, well, and Schumacher too, for that matter. So Prost is still leading. Hill is still 2nd. Martin Brundle, we'll have to wait and see now, see where he is in relation to Senna and Schumacher. Well, Senna's gone ahead of him at the end of that lap. And we're with Damon Hill again. Race order after Martin Brundle had come into the pits. Alain Prost leading, Damon Hill 2nd. They are now the leaders on their 49th lap. You're looking at the Benetton Ford accelerating away in the distance of Riccardo Patrese as we rejoin Damon Hill, and you can see them now as they come up to somebody. I can't yet identify who it is. Yes, I can. It's Thierry Boutsen in the Jordan Hart. He moves over, the very experienced Belgian, who was one of the Peugeot drivers that dominated the Le Mans 24 hours ago so very recently. They finished 1st, 2nd and 3rd, and Jean Todt, their team manager, is now with Ferrari. Ayrton Senna is in 3rd position, 43 seconds behind Damon Hill and Alain Prost. So Martin Brundle, I wait to come through, but it's Schumacher in 4th position. Brundle is down to 5th as a result of that pit stop. Into the pit lane comes the Ferrari of Gerhard Berger. It's Jean Alesi, my apologies, who was in 11th place. And it looks to me, from the rather leisurely way that he's trickling into the pits, that he may sadly be coming in to retire. Watch his hands on the wheel and see whether they grasp the side of the car. Yeah, he's getting out of the car. Jean Alesi retires from the French Grand Prix on lap 50. Oh dear, another unhappy race for Ferrari that we all want to see do well. It's the 6th time that Alesi has retired from 8 races. having had just one rostrum finish at Monaco when he was in third place. And I said earlier on that Johnny Herbert was used to being interviewed by Jonathan Palmer. Well, now he's going to be interviewed by Murray Walker, because he's just come into the box to say hello to us. Johnny, you are not having a good 1993. What happened this time? You went off very early in the race.
Yeah, I was just having a few problems with the car. It was sliding quite a bit. But when I tried to get Gerhard and Derek, and then Gerhard got me back, as we went into the quick chicane, I think they just opened a bit of air, and where the car was sliding, I just lost the downforce and it spun straight round. So a bit of a shame.
Now, we've all been distressed to see that Lotus, who started the season so well, seem to be in a bit of a trough at the moment. I gather it to be a handling problem, and we're looking, just to bring everybody up to date, at the battle between Schumacher and the McLaren Ford of Ayrton Senna, and you will see that Senna is behind. But what happened, what has happened, now let's pay attention to this. It's Riccardo Patrese, my apologies, as pay attention to one thing at a time, Walker. Now, Johnny Herbert, what has been the problem with Lotus in the last few races?
Well, we've been trying to, with the active suspension we've got, we've been working very hard, trying to get enough grip from the car, because basically that has been our biggest problem. We've tried various things, but we don't seem to have cracked it so far. So we're going to keep on trying, and hopefully we will actually get the speed back.
Well, it's the British Grand Prix at Silverstone next weekend, and it's pretty important that you do well there. Is it going to be your sort of track?
Yes, I think it would be my sort of track. It's good to be at your home Grand Prix.
Right, thanks very much, Johnny Herbert. Now, we've both been trying to talk to each other and talk to you at the same time. Riccardo Patrese in and out again to bring you fully up to date. We're on lap 51 of the French Grand Prix. Alain Prost continues to lead Damon Hill, but by only half a second. They are both lapping some 7 or 8 tenths of a second faster than the man you are looking at, or were looking at, Ayrton Senna, who is in third position ahead of Michael Schumacher. And the gap between the two of them is 8 seconds. Martin Brundle is in fifth position in the Ligier. Sixth is still Rubens Barrichello, albeit one lap behind the leaders. Comas is 7th, Andretti is 8th, Fittipaldi is 9th, Patrese is 10th, Alliot is 11th. 12th and 2 laps down is Thierry Boutsen. Derek Warwick is in 13th place. There are still 17 competitors left in the race. Michael Schumacher is now the fastest lapper of the French Grand Prix, 1 minute 19.256, and that compares with Nigel Mansell's lap record of 1 minute 17.070. So he's still 2.2 seconds off lap record speed. You watch Ayrton Senna.
Yes, so far this year we seem to have been deprived the potentially tremendous battle between Senna and Schumacher, both with the Ford engine towards the end of the races when one or the other has had a problem. But let's just hope here that at Magny-Cours, with Senna in third place, Schumacher just 5.5 seconds behind, but lapping faster, we can see the sort of battles that really Formula One should be able to produce for us, with drivers of the calibre of Senna and Schumacher as well. Brundle, meanwhile, is not far behind. He's just 4 seconds behind Schumacher, and so he could be joining the fray too, particularly if Senna and Schumacher start slowing themselves down. But of course, really, this race, it's about the Williams team at the front end, and it has to be said that this is by far and away Damon's best ever race. He's with lap 52, we're at 2/3 distance, and Damon is driving extraordinarily well. Even if Prost does have the potential here to win the race in terms of team orders, the best thing that Damon can do is to be right in his wake the whole way through, and he's doing that very well so far. And it's a McLaren, and it's Andretti again. Andretti, in fact, going very well indeed. He was in 8th place, just 3 seconds behind Comas, also running very well in the Larousse. That's going to drop him back a little bit, but he's obviously on for a top 10 finish there quite safely.
Yes, going back to what you were saying about Damon Hill, there have been 1 or 2 misguided people who have been criticising Damon for allegedly not trying hard enough on account of the fact that he has, quotes, only finished second 3 times this year. But Damon is having an extremely mature and sensible season. He is still only in his 10th Grand Prix. He has a marvellous tutor to observe in Alain Prost, and Damon Hill is taking advantage of every racing mile, as he is now. Following in the wheel tracks of Alain Prost on lap 54 out of 72. And it is, of course, essential to the Williams team that these two do not get involved in a motoring punch-up as Mansell and Patrese did last year, as a result of which Patrick Head, the technical director of Williams, had to say to them when the race was stopped after 19 laps due to rain, look, you can fight each other, but remember, we're expecting you both to finish. And since Riccardo Patrese, when the race started, had got Nigel Mansell climbing all over his rear wing, gearbox and everything else, he moved out of the way very sensibly. Well, Damon Hill is studying form from Alain Prost. He's ready to take over if there is a problem. There is still some way to go in the French Grand Prix. Williams can see 16 World Championship points coming up. They're closing again on Philippe Alliot, who is in 11th place and has already been lapped once to lap the Larousse a second time. My mind goes back to Portugal when Nigel Mansell was doing this with Philippe Alliot in a Ligier, and Alliot got in the way of Mansell, went off, Alliot that is, lost a rear wheel at enormous speed. It won't happen here, I trust.
Well, it's by now at lap 54 when the strain of driving will really begin to tell. Of course, it's been very, very hot here indeed. As these drivers go around, they're fully ensconced, of course, in 3 layers of protective Nomex fireproof wear, the helmets, the visor, the balaclava. There's hardly any exposed skin for cooling, and that's a real problem. They'll be having fluid loss of something like 1 litre per hour. So in this 1 hour 40-minute Grand Prix, 1 hour 30-minute Grand Prix, they'll lose 1.5 litres, about 3 pounds of weight. And also heart rates as well. They're going to be pounding away at 160, 170 beats per minute, with the odd peaks up to 200 when particularly dramatic incidents occur. It's a very, very harsh, demanding world out there in these cars, and something which just looking at the pictures doesn't always convey. As we see them now, they're pulling 3.5 G through this corner, which means that the head effectively weighs about 50 pounds. It's quite extraordinary as they come down towards this Adelaide hairpin. We've spoken about just how incredible the braking forces are, but even as they come out of this hairpin, they'll be accelerating from 40 miles an hour up to 150. They're coming out now 40, punching now up to 150, and that will take just 5.5 seconds. It really is a very violent world out there inside those cockpits, and that's why the seats have to be tailored so carefully to the body shape and the belts pinning you back in. As Senna goes by De Cesaris, or he tries to find a way by. De Cesaris, of course, is infamous for the difficulty of getting by him. His mirror-looking skills are not particularly good. He's got the blue flag, and that's going to be holding up Senna badly.
Yeah, it is, because Schumacher is closing on the McLaren Ford, and De Cesaris has already been lapped 3 times. Now he's been lapped 4 times by Ayrton Senna, and Ayrton Senna has got the other McLaren of Michael Andretti absolutely with him. So now, is he going to give way? And there is Andretti between Senna and Schumacher. And if Andretti knows, if there's been a message from the radio, he might make it a bit difficult for Michael Schumacher to get past him, which he can do quite legally by staying on the racing line and making Schumacher drive round him. And you're looking now at the battle for 3rd. There is Senna, number 8 in the yellow helmet, who's got past and lapped his teammate number 7, Michael Andretti. Behind him was Andrea De Cesaris, because this is a replay, and behind De Cesaris was Schumacher. So Schumacher needed to pass 2 cars, De Cesaris and Andretti, before he could get to grips with Senna again. And the leaders are now on lap 57. You're looking, of course, at a slow motion replay. They're not going that slowly. Senna, Andretti, who has been lapped, and back again with race leader Alain Prost, number 2, followed at a respectful and respectable, in the circumstances, distance by his teammate Damon Hill. And I'm going to stick my neck out now and say, although we're on lap 57, I would be surprised if I saw a change, because I don't think Damon is going to be pushing Alain Prost very hard, and Ayrton Senna, some 44 seconds behind Damon Hill, has got no hope of catching him and will be settling for third place if he can stop Schumacher from getting it from him.
I think Schumacher has just gone by Andretti, which means he's right now behind Senna, so we've got the makings of a tremendous battle for the last 15 or so laps. But I tend to agree with you, Murray. I think that Prost has probably got this race, mechanical reliability allowing, but I still maintain that if Damon can keep the form that he's got now, being right up behind Alain, it will be absolutely tremendous for him, and it'll be a great confidence booster to go towards the next weekend's Grand Prix at Silverstone. And I suspect that in the same way that Alain has been, or potentially has been, allowed to win the race here and perhaps not have the kind of threat from Damon that could have been mounted, I suspect the tables could be turned and the reverse could apply at Silverstone. It would clearly be absolutely tremendous to see Damon Hill win his first Grand Prix at Silverstone. So there he goes there, hard on the brake, going down there, down into that Adelaide hairpin, following Prost on his way through. Prost not having the ABS, but clearly none the worse for it. Damon effectively doing the reliability work here this weekend, proving that the system does work, which in fact it didn't do on the first Friday morning practice for Alain. But I think behind that, we need to look, we need to see how Senna and Schumacher are going. They're still very close together, with in fact Andretti clinging on well, because Andretti is on his third set of tyres, and such is the demands of this circuit, tyres degrade so quickly that Andretti, with his third set of tyres on, which are clearly fresher than Senna's second set, can pretty much keep up with Ayrton.
Well, you're looking at Martin Brundle now, 5th position, lap 58. He's 6 seconds behind the Senna-Schumacher battle. And he'll be hoping that they're getting in each other's way, which will allow him to use the superior power of his Renault engine in the Ligier to close on them and get to grips and try and regain his third position as Christian Fittipaldi and Andrea De Cesaris go through the right-hander at Adelaide. And Fittipaldi is in 9th position, only lapped once, whereas Andrea De Cesaris is well down the field and has now been lapped 4 times. Another really depressing race for Ligier, for Tyrrell, unfortunately, with Katayama long since out of the race. De Cesaris running 16th and last but one. We have some 7 retirements now on lap 59 because Katayama went out very early on. Johnny Herbert went out, we've heard from him. Mark Blundell went out, we've certainly heard from him. And Schumacher is right with Senna. Now, Leite has gone out, Fedor has gone out, Wendlinger has gone out, and so has Jean Alesi. And the battle for third place between the McLaren Ford of Ayrton Senna there and Michael Schumacher's Benetton Ford is well and truly joined. They are ahead of and staying ahead of the lapped Michael Andretti, and Schumacher is going for it.
Now here's a battle that we've been waiting for all season. The McLaren there, followed by the Benetton, both powered by the Ford engine. The big difference is the amount of downforce. Look at that bigger rear wing. If we get a chance to see again, the McLaren is carrying more rear wing. It looks bigger. The Benetton's is smaller, and that gives us the one differential, the fact that the Benetton is going to be a little quicker in the straight line, and that's going to make it absolutely imperative that Senna is really quick through that fast Estoril right-hander. They're not near it yet as they come down towards the chicane now, and it's going to the Chateau d'Eau corner there, third gear around there, 70 miles an hour, descending down up to 145 miles an hour, back down to third gear, through the chicane, 80 miles an hour, over the curbs. You need to use a little bit of curb here at Magny-Cours to be quick. Down through Lycée, the slow corner, second gear, punching out, the traction control, doing all the work. Now here's where Senna has really got to try and use that downforce to keep ahead of Schumacher, to try and pull out a gap, particularly around this next right-hander, this high G Estoril right-hander, because it's here that Schumacher is going to be looking to close the gap with his less downforce all the way down to Adelaide and hopefully get up the inside from his point of view.
This is Senna's 150th Grand Prix. We're driving with him now, looking back. You can just see Schumacher's Benetton under his rear wing, or you could. He's driven in 5 times as many Grand Prix as Schumacher. This is his 30th event, and the German is hanging on magnificently. As Jonathan has told you, there's a needle match between McLaren and Benetton over the Ford engines. They're very evenly matched in terms of systems. And I was very interested to see yesterday that Michael Schumacher has got on his steering wheel a special button which enables him to trim the ride height of his car. When he needs more downforce, he can get it. When he needs less downforce, he can similarly get it by pressing that button. And Senna will undoubtedly have the same sort of facility. They're coming down to the Lycée now to complete another lap. This will be the end of their 61st lap. Prost and Hill have already gone through. Still only 7/10 of a second between them. Looking forwards and backwards on Senna's car now, and that's no mean achievement. Forwards at the top, and where is Schumacher? Look at the bottom half of your picture, and you can see him between the two elements of Ayrton Senna's rear wing. And they're now doing 190 miles an hour as they go round Golf Corner. Michael Andretti is keeping them both in sight. He's in 8th place, a lap behind them. But Schumacher's going to have all his time cut out to get past Ayrton Senna. His engine may have marginally more horsepower, although there's a lot of argument about that, because the cars use different makes of fuel. They have different engine systems. One has got the tag system, and that is the Ayrton Senna McLaren, and we're back again with the leaders, with Alain Prost on his 62nd lap now, getting towards the closing stages of the French Grand Prix of 1993. And off goes the Benetton now. Is it Patrese, or it's Patrese? Riccardo Patrese has got it all wrong. He's wiped off the front wing of the Benetton, so that's another certain retirement. He was trying to get inside Christian Fittipaldi's Minardi Ford. He runs wide and clobbers the back of the car, does he? Well, he hasn't done it yet. He's oh my goodness! He mounts the Minardi, and well, Jonathan, you know about this. What on earth happened?
Well, it seems pretty extraordinary. Clearly, we had contact there. It looked perhaps as though the Minardi missed a gear and momentarily slowed, and that let the Benetton ride up the back of the Minardi. But it looked pretty odd. It looked almost as if Patrese pushed him, which I can't believe that was the case. So I would suspect a missed gear from the Minardi.
From Christian Fittipaldi. Here's a replay. Well, let's see. Patrese pulling out to the right to try and go through. And obviously there was a diminution in the differential of the speeds, if I can put it that way. All of a sudden one goes slower than the other, and into the pits for a new nose cone. There it is, number 6, Riccardo Patrese, the most experienced Grand Prix driver of them all. Here's a bit of experience that I doubt if he's had quite like that before, although I well remember his appalling crash in the Williams at Portugal when he took off and flew through the air at 180 miles an hour and got away with it. Rejoins, and while all this has been going on, the leaders are on their 63rd lap. They, of course, being Alain Prost and Damon Hill, with Ayrton Senna much closer to them now. He's brought the gap down from 44 seconds to 36 seconds. That was Gerhard Berger going out of the pits, having stopped yet again in his Ferrari, the only one still running. And on lap 63, out of 72, it's Prost leading Hill by 0.8 of a second. They are 36 seconds ahead of Schumacher, who is nothing, Senna, who is nothing ahead of Schumacher, who is 5 seconds ahead of Martin Brundle, who is lapping marginally quicker and catching them both. Barrichello is still in a superb 6th position, albeit lapped in the Jordan Hart. Hopefully going to get there first, and his first point of the year. Comas is 7th, Andretti is 8th. Fittipaldi, that you've just seen rammed by Patrese, is 9th. 11th is Alio, 12th is Boots, and Warwick is up into 13th position. And the leaders, there they are. Well, there one of them is. There's the other one. Prost and Hill, France and Britain. Williams and Williams, Renault engine and Renault engine. Goodyear tyres and Goodyear tyres, just to complete the specification. And they're separated with 9 laps to go by 7/10 of a second. And this looks as though, with Williams having finished first and second in Brazil and Donington and San Marino and Spain, it looks as though, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the grids, but the Schumacher battle continues. Jonathan.
Yes, Schumacher is ahead. Schumacher is ahead now. That's Schumacher locking wheel ahead of Senna. We don't know where that happened. We didn't see it. But that's bad news for Ayrton, because he's in and he looks like he's got a problem, because this looks like Ayrton has a problem, because Andretti's going by, and yes, that looks like to be a difficult time now for Senna.
Well, here we are. You can see we're with Senna now, and you can see, and my apologies for that, you can see Andretti closing up, and it looks as though poor Ayrton Senna is going to retire yet again. You can see Schumacher there locking up as he comes up behind Eric Comas, having already passed Ayrton Senna, so we don't know where that happened. But Senna in the McLaren has already failed to finish this year at San Marino and in Canada. He is in second position in the World Championship, and still will be for that matter, because even if Damon Hill finishes where he is now, he will still be well adrift of Ayrton Senna. But Senna desperately needs all the points he can to try and make it a run for the World Championship with Alain Prost. We're on lap 65 out of 72. Prost and Hill victoriously driving onwards, with Warwick here and Suzuki still battling, this time for 13th place. It's changed a bit. Schumacher is now third. Senna is still in fourth position ahead of Martin Brundle, but I don't think he's going to be for very much longer, because Martin is less than 2 seconds behind the Brazilian's McLaren Ford. Barrichello is still 6th. Comas 7th, Andretti 8th, Fittipaldi 9th, Alio 10th, Patrese is in 11th place, and Thierry Boutsen is in 12th. And I wouldn't half mind a look at Senna and Brundle now, but we've got Prost and Hill instead. As Andrea de Cesaris, he's now going to be lapped for the 5th time in his Tyrrell Yamaha. The Yamaha is a Judd-based V10 engine, they having abandoned their unsuccessful V12 last year. And Alain Prost is being favoured, not unsurprisingly, by the French producer. But I don't think this is a race for the lead as much as a demonstration drive at the front by the two Williams drivers, with Schumacher in third place now, 5.5 seconds ahead of Senna. And this is Riccardo Patrese locking up. He'll have his new tyres and his new nose cone. I don't know if we're being shown this replay because something happened. No, we weren't. Well, there's the confirmation for you that Ayrton Senna is only 0.2 of a second, or was when that caption was prepared, ahead of Martin Brundle in 5th position, with Rubens Barrichello in the Jordan Hart. And the Jordan Hart is made at the gates of Silverstone Circuit, where it will be appearing next Sunday for the British Grand Prix, as Prost and Hill next go past and lap Andrea de Cesaris yet again. Lap 67 now. But I do wish we could have a look at Senna and Brundle, because that's the real interest in this race.
Absolutely, yes. Senna, of course, in 4th place now, Brundle in 5th, but in between them, as I last saw it, was the second McLaren of Andretti. Now, with a bit of luck from Senna's point of view, that Andretti can just stave off the attack from, and here we are. Now we're with Senna, and Senna is putting his hand up there. He's waving across. Not entirely sure what he means by that as he goes down the straight. But Senna clearly has a problem. He's too far away from Schumacher now. We don't know what the problem is. It could be intermittent. And there is Schumacher, well ahead now, third. And what a great shame that we've been deprived once again of this battle that really should be absolutely superb between Senna and Schumacher. There's Senna. We can just see him in the background there, with, I think, Andretti behind that. And then, of course, there'll be Brundle, who'll be determined to get by. He's got another 6 laps to do it in.
Yes, and we'd like to see him, but Senna's maintaining the gap. Indeed, he's increased it a bit. It's up to 2.3 seconds now. Just to bring you back into the picture, Prost and Hill 1st and 2nd, Schumacher and Senna 3rd and 4th, Brundle a very close 5th. There is Schumacher lapping Derek Warwick, having already lapped Suzuki. That is the Jordan Hart behind him, and there are just 5 laps to go. The weather has been absolutely superb throughout the whole of the 2 days of practice, Friday and Saturday, and this race. You can see the heat haze. I'm very agreeably surprised at the reliability of the cars. That is Barrichello, who is in 6th position. He's just got to keep going for a few more laps. He hasn't got to do as many laps as the leaders, of course, because he has already been lapped. He's got one less than them to do. And frankly, with a point in the bag, he thoroughly deserves that. 21 years old, he's the youngest driver in the race. Into the pits comes Eric Comas in the Larousse. He's in 8th position, behind Michael Andretti, and in front of the 9th place man, Christian Fittipaldi. There was 26 seconds in it between them. So unless Comas has got a major problem, he should be all right to retain his place. And you're watching Alain Prost. I certainly won't say cruising home to victory, because Damon Hill is not going to let him do that. But Alain Prost is now on lap 69 with laps 70, 71 and 72 of this 2.654 mile Nevers circuit at Magny-Cours to complete. The French government spent an enormous amount of money on this circuit 3 years ago to bring it up to its present superb state. It's got the most magnificent facilities. They moved the French Grand Prix from the Paul Ricard circuit, frankly to the dissatisfaction of Formula One in general, because the Paul Ricard circuit was an excellent one. And Alain Prost or Damon Hill, whoever wins this race, is going to be the first driver other than Nigel Mansell to win a French Grand Prix at Magny-Cours, because Nigel won in 1991 and 1992. They're on lap 69. You can see in the top left corner Frank Williams peering over his magnificent console of television screens, which he sits in the garage and looks at through the race, as the leaders come down now. And that is Senna going through and lapping Suzuki, who is in 13th place, followed by Michael Andretti, followed by Brundle. And that's something off one of the cars. Now, was it off Senna or was it off Andretti? There was a part of the aerodynamics of the car dislodged there. Did you see, Jonathan?
Well, I'm sure it was off the front of Suzuki's car, but it seems to me that we can't see it, that Senna has a problem. The problem that's afflicted him so far, dropping him back from Schumacher, I'm sure has occurred again. He's slowed, and as he's slowed, the unfortunate Suzuki just hit him up the back. But behind Senna was Andretti. Now, Andretti is in fact in 7th place. He's a lap behind, even though he's just in 7th place, behind Barrichello. And this may just mean that Martin Brundle can work his way up to 4th place.
Well, I'm all for the glory of France, which is what we're getting now, with Prost leading with a Renault engine ahead of Damon Hill with a Renault engine. And we are in France, I know, but what we really want to look at is Senna and Brundle, because that's the battle in the race. This is not a battle at the front, this is a demonstration. Damon Hill is not going to attempt to take Alain Prost. Alain Prost should not have a problem with the Williams Renault, which is an extremely reliable motor car with an extremely reliable engine. He's just coming through to complete his 70th lap and start his penultimate lap. Alain Prost just that distance ahead of Damon Hill as they go through, and it is now, as they go across the start and finish line under the bridge, 1 second separating them. Alain Prost is just about 5 miles now from his 6th win in France, and I'm waiting for the 3rd place man to go through, that being of course Michael Schumacher, 25 seconds behind this battle, and Ayrton Senna that we are with now. Senna, and in front is Barrichello in the Jordan Hart, but where is Martin Brundle? Hopefully we'll see a long shot now as they go round the left-hander. Well, there is Schumacher. He's going through and taking Alliot, who, with no ceremony whatsoever, chops across the nose of the Benetton, but I suspect that Michael Schumacher will know that that was coming and it didn't affect him. We're with Prost, lap 71, 72 lap race. Prost leads, Hill second, 21 seconds behind them is Michael Schumacher, 10 seconds behind him, 4th place Ayrton Senna, 1.8 seconds behind Senna, Martin Brundle, who finished 3rd last year for Benetton, looks as though he's going to finish 5th this year for Ligier, in which case it would be Martin's 4th points finish in 8 races for the French team in 1993. And Alain Prost is now on his last lap of the French Grand Prix. He has driven a superb race.
Absolutely, he's done all that he possibly could here. He's had a difficult practice by his standards. He was running second, of course, to Hill in the early stages, got ahead at the pit stop effectively, and has really driven a masterful race, every bit the sort of race we'd expect from Prost there. But Damon has been quite extraordinary. He's hung on there, whatever. He led the first half. He's not made one mistake. There was that question mark about that vapour. We don't know what it was, if it ever was a problem indeed. Behind that, Schumacher has got ahead without the sort of battle we would have loved to have seen, sadly, of the Senna-Schumacher battle. Senna and McLaren will be frustrated not to have won, if you like, the Ford category. And I'm sure Brundle, too, will be very frustrated at not having, despite that tremendous third place on the grid, not having been able to capitalise on that in the race.
Well, you see the closing stages of the race, and sadly it looks as though Rubens Barrichello for Jordan Hart, having driven a superb race, is not going to get that point for sixth place, because he's been passed by Michael Andretti as they went into the last lap. The leaders now are almost within sight of the checkered flag, and Alain Prost and Damon Hill are going to finish together. They do so. Prost wins in France for the sixth time, and he wins by less than a second from an equally magnificent Damon Hill. They've driven a superb race. Now we just wait for the third place man, who will of course be Michael Schumacher, to come through. He's done so. Michael Schumacher has finished third for Benetton. Here is Ayrton Senna, and he has got behind him his teammate Michael Andretti. That is Martin Brundle finishing in fifth place. Andretti finishes a lapped sixth, and Rubens Barrichello finishes seventh, as an elated Alain Prost extends his right arm out of the cockpit to his countrymen to say, I have won again in France. I have got 10 more World Championship points, and it's been a great day's work for the very popular and extremely accomplished, smooth driving, effortless Frenchman. Victory in France for Prost and Williams-Renault, 1 second ahead of Damon Hill, second for Williams-Renault, 20 seconds ahead of Schumacher for Benetton Ford, fourth Ayrton Senna for McLaren Ford, fifth position Martin Brundle for Ligier Renault, sixth position and lapped of course Michael Andretti, who finishes in the points thus for the second time this year. He beat Rubens Barrichello to sixth position by a mere 3.5 seconds, with Christian Fittipaldi 8th, Philippe Alliot 9th, Riccardo Patrese 10th, Thierry Boutsen 11th, Aguri Suzuki 12th. He did get past Derek Warwick, who finished 13th. Gerhard Berger was 14th, and Andrea de Cesaris was the last finisher, and he was 4 laps behind, although Eric Comas has been classified as having finished in 16th places, 6 laps down. Well, we go on to Silverstone now for the British Grand Prix in a week's time, and your view, Jonathan, do you think the Williams-Renaults are going to be as dominant there as they have been here?
Well, yes, I think I do, really. They've certainly been dominant here. Indeed, the Williams had a 44-second lead at mid-race distance, and that slipped back to 20 seconds from Schumacher at the end. So clearly they had a lot in hand, and the last 30 or so laps from both Williams drivers were relatively off the pace, perhaps a second and a half off. But moving on to Silverstone, I see no reason why they should not continue that dominating form. But I think the most exciting thing for British fans is that Hill has really driven superbly here. It's going to be a tremendous psychological benefit to Damon Hill to have out-qualified Alain Prost when there are no team orders whatsoever, and in totally even equipment. After 2 days of qualifying, Hill was just clearly the quicker. Now that's a great boost to him. He drove superbly today, and I'm sure he will now go to Silverstone really believing he has a good chance of winning his first ever Grand Prix, and what a place to do it. It'll be absolutely fantastic.
Yes, Damon Hill has taken on the baton from his great father, double world champion Graham Hill, who had such an illustrious career. And in only his 10th Grand Prix, Damon has finished in the points again, having had 3 second places and a third already this season. But that's the man of the race, without a doubt. Alain Prost, I remind you that he was out of racing for the whole of 1992 after his disagreement with Ferrari in 1991. Left it too late in the season for him to get a drive last year. He employed all his considerable political skills to make sure that he got the best possible seat for 1993. He's sitting in it right now, having already won, of course, in South Africa, San Marino, in Spain and Canada. So this is his 5th Grand Prix win out of 8 races. Admittedly, I have to say, in the best car, the Williams-Renault combination. But that's as a result of the Williams team having done an enormous amount of work to get the right sponsors, as a result of which they get the right money, as a result of which they can get the right equipment, the right engines from Renault. And when you put that lot together under the leadership of Frank Williams and Patrick Head, the technical director, and give Adrian Newey, the design head of Williams, the opportunity to put together the best possible package, this is the result. I fear that in many ways, Prost's dominant win here in France and Damon Hill's equally dominant 2nd position is going to fuel the political fires and the battle between the constructors represented by FOCA, the Formula One Constructors Association, and the governing body of the sport, who are trying to make things cheaper and more competitive. You can't blame them for that, but there is an enormous amount of controversy about how to achieve that end. Well, that's as may be. What we came here today to see was the French Grand Prix. We've seen it, they've seen it, they're on their way home now, and all the dignitaries are here, as they always come, to the French Grand Prix at Magny-Cours, and before that to the Paul Ricard circuit. And we've seen Alain Prost win for the 5th time this year to increase his points score to 57, which means to say that he's now 12 points ahead of Ayrton Senna. When this race began, he was 5 points ahead of him. Damon Hill is closer to Senna in 3rd position. Damon Hill in the Drivers' Championship, and there's a very happy Frenchman. We've seen that picture many, many times in the past. Prost for driving for McLaren and Ferrari, and now Williams as the national anthem sounds.
And now for the winning constructor.
Alain Prost, having listened to the French national anthem for his victory and the British national anthem for his team's win in the Constructors' Championship, happily takes his 6th French Grand Prix win prize, with a very happy Damon Hill alongside him, who scored points yet again this year, having already done so in Brazil and Donington and Monaco and in Canada. And Michael Schumacher, who always manages to look happy, and he's got every reason for looking happy this time, because this is the 5th time in 8 races that he has finished on the rostrum for the first 3 places. And Michael Schumacher, I remind you, is only in his 2nd full season of Grand Prix racing, having started with the Jordan and then the Benetton teams in 1991. This is undoubtedly one of the most outstanding drivers that Germany has ever produced, and that is the greatest Grand Prix driver of all time, Alain Prost, because in winning here today, he's now raised his wins total to 49, just 1 win off a half-century of victories in Grand Prix racing, a quite incredible achievement Well, will the 50th be at Silverstone for the British Grand Prix next weekend, I'm sorry? Will Damon Hill win a Grand Prix for the first time in his short career at Silverstone next Sunday? Whichever way it goes, it'll be a good race, and we look forward to talking to you about it.
Well, there's confirmation for you of the French Grand Prix. Another fine win for Alain Prost, giving him the maximum 10 points. Damon Hill, what a terrific drive from him 1 week before Silverstone. And Michael Schumacher there in 3rd place. Drivers' Championship, well, that shows there quite clearly that Prost has extended his lead considerably over Ayrton Senna, and Damon Hill still in 3rd place. Constructors, and a massive lead now for Williams over McLaren. Benetton in 3rd place, and Benetton ever improving. Ligier currently in 4th place. Well, you can see highlights of this afternoon's race on BBC Two this evening.